Should Christians actually be playing video games? Let's talk about it. What's up, human beings? Welcome to Games and Groceries. We are here talking about an article that we found. This came from March of this year, and it is titled, "Is it a sin to play video games?" So this is again another opinion piece, and I just want to preface right ahead, we're not attacking this guy personally. I'm sure he's just a great guy in general, but we just want to react to his writing and just kind of give our opinions on it as well. So before we give you our opinions, let's first jump into his opinions, first with his opening statement. Let's see what he has to say here. He writes, "Many believers wonder, can Christians play video games? It depends. There are no Bible verses that say we can't play video games. Of course, the Bible was written way before gaming systems, but it still leaves us with biblical principles to follow." And yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of things that exist today weren't existing in the Bible, but yet it's still relevant today. That's what I try to teach my students in youth group. So I agree with that. But then he continues to say, "Before we start, in my honest opinion, we play way too much video games. Video games take people's lives." Yikes!
That's a bit strong.
Yeah.
I think he starts off really well, but then that last statement, video games take people's lives. I think he's being a little extreme. I think he definitely, you can tell he put his heart in this, but I think he put a little too much heart in that sentence. I think that sentence alone could have just been...
Before we go into any other quotes, he then just follows up with that, and I just want to read it. I don't have a screenshot up of it, but I've heard numerous stories of people who play all day rather than getting a job and working hard. We need more biblical men. Hi. In Christianity, we need more men that will go out, preach the gospel, save lives, and die to self. We need more manly young men who will stop wasting their life and do the things that older Christians can't do.
You're wasting your life.
Let me speak on this personally. I've said this over and over again. If you watch the podcast, watch the channel, you know that I'm a full-time youth pastor, and I hate opinions like this just because it's so vague. It really is. It makes it seem like you can't be a man and play video games and save lives. It goes into a sense of that if you're playing video games, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. When in all actuality is that people have free time nowadays. You can't just always be striving and always saving lives. In fact, that's not good for your mental health. Again, speaking from my own personal experience, the more I try to save lives, quote unquote, the more anxiety that I got, the more I became depressed and thinking that I can't save enough lives. So if you go out saying that having free time is wrong and the only things that you should be doing is going out, preaching the gospel, dying to self, that's not good for your mental state, man. And that's coming from personal experience. 8 years in youth ministry, by the way. Let's continue. So then he goes into this next point, which I agree, but let's talk about it a little bit more. So he says this: if the game is filled with cursing, lasciviousness, etc., we should not play it. The most popular games are so sinful and filled with all types of evil. Will playing games like Grand Theft Auto bring you closer to God? Of course not. And again, I think this is just such a bold and vague statement. He only quotes Grand Theft Auto like a lot of people do. They'll just say Grand Theft Auto and no other games. They'll just say like, oh, it's Grand Theft Auto, as if every single video game is Grand Theft Auto.
He only quotes Grand Theft Auto, and then even later on he quotes it again, like,
yeah,
because that's something he played when he was a teenager,
right? And
I'm just like, all right, so you don't know video games. Later on he lists the games that he played as a teenager, and they were like the most typical games you hear of. It's the game that every parent has heard of, every parent knows. And it's just like, all right, so you don't really know video games. You don't know that there are very narrative driven games that speak about mental health, right, and abusive relationships.
I don't personally play Grand Theft Auto. I don't really think it's good for my mental state either. I don't really think it's healthy mentally. If you have a different opinion, that's you, man. Yeah. Like, go ahead. I don't really care. But for me personally, I don't personally play Grand Theft Auto. I play games like Life is Strange, Fallout 4, Sleeping Dogs. If you haven't played Sleeping Dogs,
oh my goodness,
get on that. it's Grand Theft Auto in Hong Kong, but it's still an amazing game. But that's the thing. It's so vague when it comes to that, saying that like Grand Theft Auto will lead you to become an evil person. And what does he even mean by evil? I also want to go into the next point he says with this quote. The last sentence he says, the devil has to reach people somehow, and sometimes it's through video games.
Okay then.
Let me counter that argument. Yes, the devil has to reach people, right? God has to reach people too. God will use ways to reach his people, and let's say it together now, God can use video games. Wow. Okay. And that's the thing. To say that video games are exclusive to devil reaching.
Yep.
That makes zero sense. I know we've talked about it all the time, but Nick DiPaolo, when he's creating his video game, he's trying to reach people with video games. We had Mr. Matty Plays on. He's trying to reach people through video games. There's so many different creators that we worked with in the past, and they're just trying to reach people, make sure that they're doing okay through video games. Life is Strange is trying to reach people through video games. So to have this blanket statement to say that the devil has to reach people somehow, and sometimes it's through video games. God has to reach people, and sometimes it's through video games. Shocker. Again, I'm not trying to attack this guy. I'm more just trying to put in perspective this opinion, because the author of this article isn't the only one that has this kind of opinion. This opinion has been long standing for a while.
Yeah.
I only became a Christian at 17, and I've played video games since I was 5, and it just kind of goes with you in that way. Let's continue. And talking about childhood gaming, I think this is the real meat and potatoes for his argument. And I think he's trying to say that video games are for children and not for men. And you said this too when you were reading the article. He's really just attacking men here.
He is, because in the very beginning he was talking about we need strong men. We need men to be, men of God. We need this. And he never brings up females being gamers.
So let's go into this quote right here. Will video games become an idol and addiction to your life? Let's pause right there. A lot of people say this, and especially since the World Health Organization just deemed video games to be a mental health state. There was a quote that said that that's kind of a double-edged sword in the way of, yes, it will give people the opportunities to get help if they are truly addicted to video games. Like this guy said before, if they're not looking for work, if they're just playing all day and they don't see the problem with that, and we're talking about for 72 hours straight, and they need to pay their rent. And it gives people that kind of opportunity, but it's also the double-edged sword of people will misinterpret what gaming addiction is, like people like this, in where if you just play video games for a weekend, I don't see a problem with that. But let's continue with this quote. When I was younger, before I was saved, wow, my God was video games. I would come home from school and start playing, here we go, Madden, Grand Theft Auto, and Call of Duty, etc. All right, so you were basic. Got it. I would come home from church and start playing all day. It was my God, and I was addicted to it, just like many Americans today. So, from the sounds of this story, when I was younger, I would come home from school right after church. It sounds like he was like between the ages of 10 and 12. And I don't see a problem with that. What do you mean by addicted? And I would like to know his hours that he put in, of what it means to be addicted, that you play all day. You're 10 years old. You're 12 years old.
What else are you gonna do when you get home from church or when you're not at school? Of course you want to play video games. Just like before there's video games, they wanted to be outside all day.
That's the other part. I find this to be, you're blessed. That you can live like this, that you're 10 and 12 years old and you can just play video games all day. Where we come from in Philadelphia, there's areas where you're 10 and 12 and you have to provide for your family, man. The 10 and 12 years old, you should be blessed that you can play video games all day. Let's just go into his closing thoughts. In conclusion, do I believe that playing video games with your friends is wrong? No. But we must use discernment. We must pray to the Lord for wisdom and listen to his response, not our own response. Use biblical principles. If the game you want to play is sinful and it promotes evil, leave it alone. While I don't believe playing video games is a sin, I do believe that there are way better things that a Christian should be doing in their spare time. Things such as getting to know God better, through prayer and his word. Again, I don't have a problem with that statement. I don't have a problem if it's coming out of a place of you're playing video games way too much and you're not putting on your adult responsibilities. I understand that. But to say that there are better things to do and you give blank statements like that without instructing people of what it means to get to know God better through prayer and through his word, that's such a blanket statement. And that's exactly why I got into youth ministry in the first place, is because you tell kids that and they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then you know what they're going to keep doing? Playing that sinful video game, Grand Theft Auto.
I don't know about you, but I personally can't spend 4 hours praying and doing devotionals. I can spend time with God and do those things, but personally, I don't think I have the attention span to focus like that. And I think, especially in youth ministry, we hear this argument all the time from parents.
Yeah.
And it just seems like he doesn't realize, like you're saying, like, yes, of course, there are addictions in video games, but it doesn't seem that he differentiates that.
Right.
It seems like he really does think that adults who play video games are addicted to video games.
Right.
Kids who play video games are addicted to video games. There's no difference between being addicted to video games and enjoying video games. You know, like he doesn't understand the difference.
So to close out our thoughts on this, I don't necessarily disagree with what he has to say. In the terms of just saying that, yeah, if you're addicted, maybe you should be doing something more productive. That's why we promote, you know, doing your adult responsibilities first. However, I don't agree with how he says it, if that makes sense, right?
It's not that we disagree with his opinion, it's that we disagree with his view.
So I just want to quote a piece of scripture just to counter this argument. This is coming from Colossians 2, which he also quotes in this article, which I'll have linked down below. I'll have this article linked. You can read it yourself. But I just want to read from Colossians 2:18. Let no one keep defrauding you of your prize by delighting in self-abstinent and worship of angels, taking a stance on visions he has seen, inflated without cause by his fleshly mind. Is pretty much saying, Paul is saying to the Colossians, let no one just say that, oh, look how better I am. Look how many visions I've seen. Look how much I abstain from things. Look how many things I've abstained from video games. Right? Let no one discount you from that. Verse 20 reads, if you have died with Christ to the elementary principles of the world, why, as if you were living in the world, do you submit yourself to decrees such as do not handle, do not taste, and do not touch? So again, going off of that, why are we going to be saying that God can't use video games? God can't use video games to reach people. Why can't we use video games to reach people? Even in Colossians, he was talking about you've died with Christ. You are now in Christ. You're a Christian. Why are you then following the laws of another person, right? You're following the laws of God. If you're truly following the laws of God, then you can use video games for the greater good. So I don't like how he has video games as exclusively to the devil, that the devil reaches people through video games.
You know, we're always saying like you can reach people through video games, through doing things like this and just talking to people and just saying like, hey, we're Christian and we play normal things. We're normal people.
Right.
Sort of. We're not actually normal. But, you know, we come home and we do something productive to help people and to talk to people and relate. And I'm just curious, you know, so how is it different that we come home and play video games and he goes home and watches football? How many people is he reaching by going home, sitting on his couch and watching football after church?
And I think that what he's really just confused by, because let's be honest, video games are, generally speaking, a new medium, a new form of entertainment medium. So it's hard to differentiate and it's hard to see how video games have grown over the years. And if you're outside of the video game world, you don't see the good that video games are doing. So I don't think he's coming out of this in an aggressive way, but I do think he's just misunderstanding what video games are in 2019. And he writes his article in 2019. I think he's just misunderstanding where video games have gone since the days of the first Grand Theft Auto, or since he was a kid, since Call of Duty and Madden were the only games you really play. I think he's just not understanding where video games are today. And that's why I don't say we're attacking this guy personally. Absolutely not.
We just disagree with his views.
Right. And he can disagree with my views, and that's okay. He's still my brother in Christ. It's just a matter of not understanding where video games are today. So again, I'll have this article linked down below. Form your own opinions, but this is just our response. And I think that Christians can play video games, but I do agree with him that have discernment involved. If it is kind of messing with your mind, if it is kind of changing your attitudes in any way, if it is trying to lead you away from your own responsibilities, I do agree to say that, yeah, maybe you should not be touching that. However, you can reach people through video games. We're trying to reach people through video games, and I think that you can come up with your own conclusions, but that's just our opinion. Form your own.
So comment down below, do you agree with us? Do you agree with the writer of the article? Let us know down in the comments and we can have a nice discussion. Nice discussion.
And don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed our thoughts. Don't forget to share it with your friends if you think it's worth sharing. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell because we have discussion videos just like this on the channel. So if you enjoy this kind of thing, definitely hit that subscribe button. And with all that said and done, we'll see you in the next video.